JC, I really love your videos in this little community you're part of. I grew up in Los Angeles and my parents were keen on telling me to never get involved with Scientology and signs that you might be interacting with a front group. All three of us have seen Going Clear multiple times. Do you still feel a certain type of way about psychiatry? Sometimes I wonder if this bias is the major unifying factor among Scientologists, even if they one day leave the church. Thank you. I wouldn't say that an antagonism or antipathy towards psychiatry is the major unifying subject between all Scientologists, even those who leave. I'd say more of the spiritual beliefs that I was just laying out are probably more of the more unifying belief that keeps most Scientologists together. As far as psychiatry goes, no, I have radically changed my views on the subject since I left Scientology because I've done research on it and I've educated myself on it versus just falling for and believing all the claptrap that Hubbard had to say about it. It wasn't all claptrap, of course. Hubbard's view of psychiatry was right out of the 1940s and 50s. And psychiatry back then was very different from how it is now. And I'm not saying it's, leaps and bounds better, but in a number of ways it is, right? Ice pick lobotomies and things like that they happened. I mean, Hubbard didn't make that stuff up. It wasn't straight out of his imagination that, psychiatrists operated on people with transorbital leucotomies and lobotomies and things like that, or that they electric shocked people in an abusive fashion. Or that there's too much of a proliferation of psychotropic medications out there, especially with kids. These are controversial issues that way more people than Scientologists are talking about. There are whole groups out there who are very, very anti-psychiatry when it comes to those practices. But those people aren't calling for an abolishing all of psychiatry because some psychiatrists electric shock people. They want to get rid of that practice, but they don't want to get rid of psychiatry or psychology because those are the only fields that anybody's really looking into. How do we think, and what's going on with the way we look at the world and that sort of thing, right? And then there's been a lot of good stuff that's come out of some of those studies. All the stuff we talk about with, for example, mind control techniques, cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, a lot of the things that you learn about in critical thinking have psychological or, have their bases in psychological studies, right? And they sort of feed one another. And psychiatry has done a lot of good for a lot of people. There are some people that psychotropic medications are exactly what they need to live a higher quality of life. And I'm not down on that at all. I have nothing to say about that. If psychotropics are doing you good, great. And if they're not, and the side effects are not good for you, and that's what's happening, then get off of them or get with your doctor and figure out a different alternative way of dealing with the issues that you're having, right? Because they're not for everybody. Some people have very negative reactions to those things. It is very far from a hard science. In other words, like a very locked down, very figured out sort of subject, right? Psychology and psychiatry do not have it figured out, at all. But I support a lot of the work that they're doing in order to try to figure it out. And they certainly have it better figured out than Scientology. So that's kind of my view on it at this point.